Currently, only New South Wales is on board with Gillard's crusade to transform our education system. Ben Jensen, School Education Program Director of the Grattan Institute, says the Gonski money itself is not a solution to our failing students. The solution lies in the way the money is spent.
Well, we've seen a change in the discourse in the last few weeks. Previously, it was always leading up to COAG. That was going to be the day, and that was going to be agreement day, or it was all going to fall apart. Then in a few days leading up to COAG, it got pushed back. So we've now got until June 30 to reach an agreement. We've seen New South Wales sign up today, biggest state, biggest player in school education, obviously a key move. And I would imagine that the next major hurdles will Victoria sign up and will Queensland sign up? It's pretty clear for everyone that WA will sit out, and I would say the same perhaps for the Northern Territory, but WA is the loudest voice at the moment.
Do we actually know how exactly the federal government intends on spending the cash?
Well, I think this is one of the great ironies of the funding reform. People say, what sort of impact will it have on schools? And actually the federal government can't determine that. The states run schools, the non-government sectors run schools in their systems. So the efficacy with which the money is spent is purely up to the states. And the federal government will really have very little say over how efficiently it's spent. And to be honest, efforts by the federal government to try and control how the states run their school systems will largely prove to be counterproductive, as they have in the past.
For your opinion pieces for The Australian, you've spoken about international schooling systems and what they're doing in the classroom. Can you tell us what exactly they are doing that's improving students' results?
Well, I think from a policy perspective, we actually have to take a step back from saying it's one particular program that works, and it's an overall strategy that has an unrelenting focus on learning. So these systems have invariably started with, okay, how do we want our students to learn and at what level? And then they say, well, okay, what sort of teaching will best meet those ends? And they look at it as a behavioural change process. So a behavioural change process that says, how do we take learning and teaching behaviours from where they are now to where we want them to be? And then they structure all their policies and programs to achieve that ends. So initial teacher education, teacher mentoring, professional learning, teacher appraisal and feedback, school principal training is all about how do we take learning and teaching behaviours where they are now to where we want them to be. We have mentoring, it's very common in Australia, it just doesn't work.
Why doesn't it work?
It doesn't work because it's largely just a ticker box exercise. If you look at the data, if you're a young teacher in Australia, you're more likely to work in a school with a mentoring system in place. So we had a big trend 10, 15 years ago, we have to help new teachers. So we said, okay, we have to get mentoring put in place. So schools now have mentoring programs, they fill out the forms, they tick the boxes, yes, we've got a mentoring program. But the data is very clear that if you're a new teacher in Australia, you're no more likely to get feedback on how to improve your teaching if you're in a school with a mentoring program than if you're in a school without one. So the mentoring programs are in place, we've ticked the box, but it's just not helping teachers. If you think about improving school education as a behavioural change process, as something that says, here are learning and teaching behaviours now, here's where we want them to be, that's a behavioural change process. That puts all the emphasis on effective implementation. So all the policies and programs won't matter a skerrick in the world if they're not implemented properly. And I think the mentoring example is a clear example of the right program but just wasn't implemented properly. The Gonski money can actually be very useful. It can actually provide an impetus for change, and that's what we need. Gonski money will have no impact if it is just spent the way it's been spent in the past.